My name is Ayush Garg, and I'm a sophomore at American University. So today, the newspapers in Pakistan and India are filled with the news that Hafiz Syed, the mastermind of the 26 Mumbai attacks, is actually hosting a rally in Lahore. Now, this individual is a terrorist listed by the UN Security Council, and his group is also a terrorist group that is listed under the UN Security Council. Now, the news is that the Pakistani government has actually provided 2 Pakistani railway trains to ferry people to the rally, as well as tents and other places. Now, could you please explain to me why this is happening when this individual is both a UN assigned terrorist, as well as the US has held a $10 million bounty on him? Because that defies me.
No, I'll be very happy to respond to this. This news item is incorrect in the first place. That the government of Pakistan is providing 2 trains to ferry people. This is something which has been clarified by Pakistan Railways. I saw this news item. As a matter of fact, if you ask me, this news that 2 trains are being provided to Hafiz Saeed, this news originated from Times of India. About 3 days ago, it was also picked up by some other international media. We had a thorough investigation done as to where did it come from. So I checked from Pakistan, because sitting here, I wanted to have the facts. Like you, many other people, they wanted to ask me the same question, and I wanted to be absolutely prepared to. So I was told that this is absolutely entirely incorrect. With regard to the bounty that you mentioned on Hafiz Saeed, you are right that there is a bounty on Hafiz Saeed, not on Hafiz Saeed. There is a bounty by the US government, and the bounty says that anybody who provides information, any information or any evidence that would help implicate Hafiz Saeed in a court of law, and if that information or evidence is credible, the person would be given $10 million. So it's not bounty on him, it's a bounty on information leading to his implication in a court of law. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to find anything that would trigger that kind of an action against him. He was arrested by the government following the Mumbai attacks, because his name was mentioned in the first information report that was shared with us by the Indian side. He was apprehended along with other people, but then because of lack of evidence, as is the case with all the courts throughout the world, he was bailed out. So that's the kind of the situation.
Yeah, but like one follow-up question.
Quick follow-up, and then we'll go back.
Would you deny that the rally is taking place because his group is still a sanctioned group by the UN terrorist?
I'm not aware of whether the rally is taking place or not, but the news item mainly pertained to the 2 trains being provided to ferry people to attend his rally. That was something that was incorrect.
Professor Ahmed?
Thank you. First of all, let me welcome you to the campus, Excellency. My question pertains to the geopolitical situation in South Asia. You've talked very clearly and optimistically about the western border of Pakistan between Afghanistan and Pakistan. I'd like you to comment on, because I'm puzzled, the eastern border. We were all of us committed to peace in South Asia, very encouraged by the thaw which took place between India and Pakistan a couple of months ago. And then we saw recently the SAARC meeting, where there was this very cold interaction between the prime ministers of India and Pakistan. And then you have the actual firing taking place on the borders, where people are being killed, thousands have been displaced. So I want you to make some sense of it for me. What is going on? What are India and Pakistan aiming for the long term? Because I was hoping that both prime ministers would move South Asia towards peace and prosperity. Both of them are committed to peace and prosperity for their countries, and therefore implicitly the region.
I think this is a very important question, because to be very honest, I have dealt with this issue for a very long time. I feel that things have progressed over the years. The kind of tension that we are witnessing between our 2 countries, whether it's on the line of control or the statements which are being made from the other side. This is something that we have seen earlier also. My point is that we need to basically come to some kind of an arrangement whereby both the countries should be able to start a sustained and sincere dialogue to address all the issues that bedevil this relationship. Why I say this? Because since 1948, we have, if you look at the history of Pakistan and India, certainly it's not a glorious history. It's a very, it's a history which is tension-ridden. We have had wars, we have had talks, and the kind of approach that we have followed from 1947 till say 1998, that was the approach that you can term as on and off approach. And on and off approach meant that you entered into discussions and the talks were disrupted because of one incident or the other incident taking place, or because of the domestic political considerations. Following 1998, after the nuclearization of South Asia, we followed a managed relationship approach. Managed relationship meant that you don't go to war, but you somehow try and manage this relationship. But I think the phase that we need to enter is the phase of whereby we need to adopt a problem-solving approach. Because on and off approach was not good. The managed relationship approach was also not very good because it remained accident prone, as we are witnessing now in the shape of firing across the line of control and the kind of statements which are being made. Problem-solving approach would mean addressing all the issues, the substantive issues between our two countries, whether it is Kashmir, whether it's Siachen Glacier, whether it is water issues, Sir Creek, etc., and terrorism. These are all issues of great importance that we need to sit and discuss very, very sincerely. That's the only way we can make progress and also achieve our respective economic agendas, because unless we do that, the region as a whole would be seen as a tension-prone region, and we would unlikely make the kind of progress that we want to achieve in terms of economic revival or addressing other non-conventional threats like poverty, illiteracy, climate change, terrorism. These are all important issues that we need to address.
Please.
Hi, my name is Mahmoud.
Here, can you use the mic? Thanks.
My name is Mahmoud and I'm a junior at SIS. And I wanted to get your take on the D word, the drones.
Sorry?
The drones.
Drones, okay. Well, drones is certainly a very sensitive issue in Pakistan. There are, and our position on drones is very clear. We think that there are issues related to legality of the use of drones. There are issues related to sovereignty of a country that needs to be taken into account. There are moral issues also which are attached to the use of drone strikes. We have made our position very, very clear to the US side, and this is something which remains a part of our important discussion with the US side.
Can I follow up on that and just ask you
Sure.
about sort of a broader, whether you see a broader international conversation developing around this issue? I feel like the United States, from its perspective, should really be wanting to get out in front on a conversation about the use of drones, because while right now the United States is the main country using this technology in warfare, other countries inevitably will be doing so down the road, and so establishing sort of rules of the road on the use of these on the use of this type of warfare seems to me to be would be in the United States' interest if it chose to try to get out in front on a conversation. But Pakistan isn't the only country concerned about the use of U.S. drones. What kind of international conversation do you see developing, and do you see that developing within a United Nations context? Do you see that sort of in some other format for how we think about this type of warfare?
No, I think this issue is now being debated extensively by almost every country. The issue is being debated by the human rights organizations. There are various other groups who are discussing. Academics are also discussing the negative consequences of the use of drones, because today this technology is available to the US. Tomorrow it could be available to many other countries, and you can well imagine the kind of chaos it is going to create in case the extensive use of drones becomes quite prevalent. You are absolutely right that the position that we have taken that has many supporters at the international level, because recently when we moved a resolution in the UN, we received a support of the overwhelming majority of the members of the United Nations General Assembly. And there were few abstentions and only one or two who voted against it. But more than, I think it's 160 countries, they supported Pakistan on this, and the resolution was passed. So now there is greater awareness about the dangers involved in the rule. In our context, we see that this has also been counterproductive in our own, in terms of our own initiatives that we have taken to reduce violence and to end extremism in the tribal areas of Pakistan. Because there is obviously a collateral damage that has to be taken into account, which creates a lot of problems for the country.
All right, also, if you're interested in following up on these issues, I would encourage you to read Professor Ahmed's book, The Thistle and the Drone, which looks at the effect of the use of American drones on tribal societies and relationships, which is a very important book. Yes, Professor Singh.
Professor
Here.
Durrani, thank you so much
Here,
for being
can you
here
get the mic?
Thank you so much for being here at SIS. It's a personal pleasure to welcome you here. At this school where we do a lot of policy-oriented stuff, courses which are very into foreign policy, politics. I teach a course on diaspora because in this country, interest groups and diaspora politics is an important aspect of how we study and understand how policy can be shaped. I'm aware a lot of people here may not be aware of the strength and the potential of the Pakistani diaspora. I'm aware that first generation has now been investing back. They're very wealthy. They've been funding politics. Some of them have set up state-of-the-art hospitals in Pakistan. What is the level of outreach to your Pakistani second generation diaspora who are here, my students? And how would you like to reach out to them, and what are their issues of identity that you're aware of or trying to explore? Thank you.
Well, Mena, I thought that members of the family are not allowed to ask questions in this forum. As you sense, you are a member of the family, so and let me introduce all of you that she is somebody who is very close to us, and she is like a sister to me. This is an important question that you have asked, Mena. The reason I'm saying is that it's extremely important to reach out to the next generation of Pakistani Americans. Because the first generation that came to this country, they worked hard, they made a mark, and they still continue to maintain their very strong links with the country of birth. But the second generation or the third generation is the one that we need to basically keep them apprised of the developments which are taking place in Pakistan, and also somehow maintain their contact with Pakistan. What we are trying to do is now that whenever I travel to any city in the US, I make it a point to interact with I visit the universities, meet with the Pakistani American students, the South Asian students, to interact with them, to brief them about important developments taking place in Pakistan. Secondly, we have initiated a program at the embassy which is known as Generation Next. Generation Next, it's a very good program that we have. So during the summer vacations, we provide internships to students, Pakistani American students and we exposed them. I think this is the best internship program that I claim with a high degree of confidence anywhere being offered in this country, because we expose them to some important meetings on a daily basis. They attend all the, not very top secret meetings, but the reasonably confidential meetings. They have to write papers on a daily basis. We expose them to think tanks where these discussions are taking place. We prepare them to respond to some of the questions which are raised so that they should also are able to respond to some of the issues which are raised in various think tank interactions. And it's a wonderful program. Another program that we have is that we invite school children from all over the US to come and spend a day or two with us at the embassy. So these young boys and girls, they come to the embassy twice a year, and they come in a very large number. This year, in August, we had about 250 children from all over and there is this organization, Pakistani American, who is a very affluent Pakistani American, so he invites them. So he makes arrangements for their lodging, accommodation, and also their visits to the embassy. So this is another program that we have initiated, which is I think very good in terms of keeping their strong link with Pakistan.
Yeah, Neha.
Hello, my name is Neha. Hello? Okay. Hello, my name is Neha, and I'm a freshman in SPA. And I actually recently wrote a paper on the transition to democracy in Pakistan. And, ever since the separation from India, it's dealt with many problems within the country that has kept it from fully making the transition to democracy. And my question for you is, what do you think is the biggest factor in keeping it from fully becoming a democracy?
I would say that the kind of transitions which have taken place in Pakistan, for instance, we had elections in the country in 2008. One democratically elected government, they completed its full 5 years term, and then replaced by another democratically elected government. So that's, from that point of view, we feel that that's a very good, kind of a transition which has taken place in the country. If you look at some of the other developments which have taken place in the country, for instance, the kind of media freedom that you witness in Pakistan, our media has become ruthlessly independent. And I'm saying in front of some of our media people who are sitting here, it's a very, very ruthlessly. You haven't seen this kind of independence anywhere, and in the world. You have a judiciary which is again a very, very strong judiciary, because the judiciary, the kind of role it played in defying the former military rulers is something which is again which is unprecedented in the country. You have a growing civil society. Look at this phenomena of sit-ins that is taking place for the last 3 months. It is a noisy democracy, there is no doubt about it. But to be very honest, from the perspective of any Pakistani, we don't really see any threat to democracy taking place in Pakistan. As a matter of fact, all the institutions are now getting stronger. They're getting a voice, whether it's the civil society, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the media, whether it's the political parties. and the political, and I see a lot of maturity also, which is setting in the political parties. When it was felt that that things are getting out of hands, the parliament passed a very strong resolution in support of democracy. So all these things are, I think, very, very important in terms of strengthening of democracy in the country. I have, democracy is going to stay in the country. I have absolutely no doubt about it. When I was working in Pakistan as Foreign Secretary, I had seen this change taking place. I went back to Pakistan after spending 6 years abroad, 3 years in Australia and 3 years in Belgium. And when I went back to Pakistan, I myself was surprised that things had changed to a large extent, because now, the secretaries to the government, they were being summoned by the parliamentary committees on a regular basis. They were being put on the mat on a regular basis. The courts are summoning them on one issue or the other. There is a lot of focus on good governance. There is a lot of focus on all these issues in the country.
Thank you for coming, Ambassador. My name is Abdullah Faisal. I was a graduate of SIS from 2012. Just in town to see my old school.
Welcome
Okay,
back.
good.
Thank you, thank you. There's a running joke in the Pakistani community in America that Pakistan is the only country in the world where the army has its own country, right? Which is just a critique of how much influence the Pakistani military has on the country. As a young child going to Pakistan, I would hear things from my cousins and my uncles saying, that factory belongs to the Pakistani military. I'm like, well, what does this factory do? I say, well, they produce cement. They also make cereal. They also make soap. So I'm just wondering what's being done by the government of Pakistan to sort of move the country forward in terms of its economics, denationalizing the economy so that we're more in line with the region, the government of India, the economy of more competitive countries in South Asia and East Asia as well.
No, I think that was the perception, but I think if you ask me, that's an old narrative. An old narrative in the sense that, as I mentioned, that things have changed in Pakistan over the last several years. When I say this, because if you also are keeping a focus on developments taking place in Pakistan, we formed this Cabinet Committee on National Security. Cabinet Committee on National Security, the reason behind the formation of this committee was exactly to bring all the stakeholders under one platform to discuss and debate issues, and then a decision is taken by the chief executive of the country, which is the Prime Minister. And this is exactly what is happening. For instance, I have been a part of that Cabinet Committee on National Security before coming to Washington. Things are discussed and debated. Every issue, whether it's relations with India, whether it's issues related to terrorism, whether it's issues related to Afghanistan, or other important issues. They're discussed. There is a very frank and open debate takes place, and so from that point of view, I think that narrative has slightly changed now. The other thing that I wanted to say is that military in any country has a role, and I can give you thousands of examples, including in the United States of America. My understanding of the policy formulation, whether it is this country or whether any other democracy that you talk about, whether it's India also, these institutions do have their inputs, and they do. It's not always necessary that an input that is given by a political leadership would carry the day. Sometimes it is the Pentagon whose view is given more, is more acceptable. Sometimes it is the intelligence community's point of view which is given more credence. So these are the kind of things which take place on a regular basis. I would say that things have changed over the last several years. Again, because of the role that that judiciary is playing, and the kind of the way the political parties have begun to assert themselves, not inside and outside the parliament.
I would like to just follow up on the question, just to probe a little further on this issue of the military's role in the economy. Because we've seen how, I mean, for example, as we've watched the events unfold in Egypt over the last, now I guess almost 4 years, this has been one of the big issues within Egypt, is the military is so entrenched in the economy that it makes it very difficult to move forward with democratization. How do you see things in Pakistan with respect to that particular issue and the ability then of a broader civil society and broader economy developing, role for small businesses and so on that are outside the scope of the military?
Yeah, I would say that, to be very honest, our DNA is entirely different from the Egyptian DNA. We have very strong traditions with regard to democracy in the country. The way the political parties, they have grown in Pakistan over the years. The way a common man would sort of express his views. Even if you look at the history of Pakistan, the military governments could also have a role in the affairs of the government with the help of some political parties in the past. But the point is that now the way things have moved forward, I think that role is certainly definitely quite exaggerated. As I mentioned that for instance, after independence, most of the government institutions, because of lack of resources, they would generate their own resources for the welfare of the troops, for the welfare of the families, for the welfare. The same kind of a phenomena that we witnessed not only in the army but in other institutions also, including in the civilian institutions, because that was the kind of a tradition that was established in the country after. It so happened that one institution ran its kind of cement industry or the other ventures that they established with a degree of success. The others, they could not succeed exactly in the same fashion. The way these industries are being run, again, if you visit those industries, the very fact that a cement factory which is being run by the, say, a subsidiary organization of the army, it's not that the army would run it, it's a kind of a separate entity that would run that. But it is run on a very professional grounds. The produce from these industries would also sell in the market, not only in Pakistan but outside Pakistan at a premium because of the extremely good quality that is being sort of produced, and that certainly, in our view, doesn't really pose any additional burden on the government. It's basically they are contributing to the economy as well at the same time. The point is that for as long as it does not interfere with the democratic polity, I think it's not an issue inside the country.
Melanie, you had a question?
Yes. Picking up on the theme of bilateral cooperation and the development of the economy, with respect to the role of women, I just returned from 2 weeks in Pakistan, and the local business community, the international multilateral or multinational corporations, and all the donors all agree that more women are getting in an education and more women are getting into the economy. It's a very positive trend. And I just want to acknowledge the government's support of the council and this memorandum of understanding on women's entrepreneurship that was signed in May. I just attended some, on behalf of the council, some meetings at the State Department with the U.S. Trade Representative's Office and the Department of Commerce. And a representative from Commerce will be going to Pakistan this month to work with women entrepreneurs on trade issues, just to build some capacity And I know that part of our implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding to support women entrepreneurs is to include them in this upcoming bilateral investment conference that you mentioned. If you could talk a little bit about that and where you see that going.
No, I think that's, thank you so much, Melanie, for highlighting these issues. This conference that is taking place in Pakistan in March, this is a very important conference. It's a business conference where a large number of members of the business community from the US, from energy, from auto sector, from textile, they would be participating, and they would be looking at various joint ventures to be established in Pakistan, or for that matter in the United States of America. We basically would like to have this a two-way traffic, because as if you know that one of the major Pakistani concerns is setting up a fertilizer factory in a major, with an investment of about $3 billion here in the US. So that's the kind of involvement that we would like to have with the. There has to be an interface between the business community of the US and the business community of Pakistan. You talked about the women entrepreneurs. Again, I think I'm glad that you had a successful visit to Pakistan. But things again are changing. For instance, very few people in this country would be aware that we have 30% women parliamentarians in the National Assembly. We have 30% in the provincial assemblies, and also when the elections took place for the local government, local bodies, again we had 30% women representation. So this is something that is being encouraged in Pakistan. I was very happy to learn, for instance, that the banks are now recruiting more women bankers in Pakistan. Medical colleges, now there is 60 to 70% enrollment of women. So, some of the other, for instance, engineering university, when we were growing up, when we were studying in Lahore, we didn't really see very many women joining the engineering university. But now we have about 35 to 40% women in the engineering university. So, that's how, this is how we are trying to develop the country, by having increased focus on women participation in every walk of life. And this is something which we feel is also very, very important. But I think at the same time, it's equally important to empower women from the tribal areas of Pakistan. I think that's the next area of focus, because once we are able to clear the tribal areas from all these extremists and terrorists, we will be able to focus on the empowerment of women from the tribal areas also. I was very happy to see recently, when I interacted with about 150 students from Pakistan who had come here on a Fulbright scholarship program. And these students, they included some students from the tribal areas of Pakistan, and bright students. There were some bright girls from the rural areas, which were not where the educational facilities, certainly as compared to the urban centers, are not up to the mark, but they competed under the scholarship program, and they were able to come here. So I think these are all very positive developments which are taking place in the country.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, so yeah, we'll go to that.
That religion is hindering Pakistan's progress. It's holding it back a little bit because of the old religious ideologies that are still deeply ingrained in the culture of Pakistan, both politically and socially.
I see I think your perception is because of the activities of some of the extremist organizations. Otherwise, religion has not really hindered progress in the country. As I mentioned that we have made tremendous progress in the last 60, 70 years of our existence. If you compare Pakistan from the time that it got independence, and if you compare Pakistan now, there is a lot of progress that has taken place. This phase that we encountered after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and the kind of mistakes which were committed in that part of the world in order to defeat Soviet Union, I think that those kind of mistakes came back to haunt us a little bit. But I think realization of mistakes is again something which is very, very important. And in case you try and correct those mistakes by taking some actions, which the government of Pakistan is trying to take, things begin to improve. And we feel very confident, and the factors that I just mentioned. For instance, to give you one example, that Moody's, for instance, has recently upgraded Pakistan's rating, economic rating, from negative to stable. And in the second review that took place, again, it was upheld. Similarly, in terms of the economic indicators, they're all moving forward from 3.5% to 4.5 this year, from 4.5 to the projection by the World Bank is to 5.5 next year. These are the kind of developments which are taking place. The participation of women, I said that in the national life, the overall, overwhelming consensus in the country against extremism and terrorism is, these are all very positive indicators. And I think religion is certainly, religion has, I won't agree with that assessment. Yes.
Well, the aroma from the food in the back has reached us here in the front, which means it's time for the reception. I do want to just close by thanking Professor Meena Singh for all her efforts to make this event possible. And Ambassador, it's such an honor, as it always is, to have you here at American University. And your legion of admirers in Washington just keeps growing during this time that you've been representing your country here, and I'm sure will continue to grow with your outstanding diplomatic skills. So we really appreciate your taking the time to provide your perspective and your knowledge and answering so many questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.